Welcome to the Midlife Men podcast with me, Philip Briscoe. In this episode, I'm joined by Christian Elliot. Christian is CEO and founder of True Whole Human and a certified holistic health coach with years of experience in helping people uncover the root causes of illness and achieve true healing. From your emotional baggage to perhaps mental overdrive, we're going to discuss the big picture of wellness. So that includes mind, body, and spirit working in harmony. So welcome to you, Christian.
Well, thank you for having me, Philip. It's great to be here.
So let's start off by perhaps you can talk about your background and how you ended up doing what you're doing now.
Sure. Yeah. Well, I give you the short version. About 22 years ago now, I needed to get my health in order. And so that re-nudging, I had just finished going to seminary. So I had 4 years of that after a bachelor's degree. And so I went into trying to get my physical health in order, and it took me about 6 months. I found a chiropractor who changed my whole paradigm of health and kind of put me on a better path. And then about 2 years of really solidifying it, doing a lot of study, trying to figure out how come I completely missed this paradigm of health. And what I found was a broader view of health than I had ever. When you're growing up, it's get sick, go to doctor, and that's kind of what you do. And so realizing there were so many other ways to heal or modalities I'd never heard of made me very interested to find out how to approach the health more holistically. And so that ended up, short version, we had a brick and mortar location for 9 years. We grew to 10,000 square feet, and we had chiropractors, acupuncturists, massage therapists, personal trainers, nutritionists, and so on. And through the course of that, about 2003, I got married. June 2023, I got married. And then fast forward, I've got 6 kids. We homeschool. Had ended up closing the brick and mortar business. We moved into doing this online. Most recently, I've really just set detoxification in the crosshairs as the biggest area of opportunity where I can really move the needle for people. If I can get at the upstream mental, emotional, physical, and spiritual root causes of disease, it's so much easier to help someone heal. And as you can imagine, that's a pretty wide brush. And so there's a lot of different elements of the human experience, the human condition, and ways to help someone. So I'm not someone who's scared off by complexity. Somehow I really like it. It's more fun to me. There's so many different ways to win now. If you can have permission to ask the questions surgically that help you find where someone's really stuck, that's what I do pretty much every day. So that gets us, that's a very quick version of the last 22 years.
So how does physical and mental health, how do they work together? And I guess spiritual health as well. Are they all inextricably linked?
Yes, definitely. So much of our culture or the way science has fragmented into doctors for every body part or hyper specialization. What it has done is it muddied the water and it's made it onerous or unnecessarily complicated to get someone well. But yes, the mental, emotional, physical, and spiritual, they are all interlinked. And I gave up years ago on trying to separate them because I realized if somebody's got a broken heart, it's really hard to heal their broken body. And spin that any way you want of those different 4 areas, but they are part of the same person. And to think that I can just focus on someone's gut health or on their hormones or on their diet or on their exercise or on their, child abuse trauma and fix the whole thing became silly. Because your mind, most people have heard of the placebo effect, meaning if I have some level of hope, or when they use it in homeopathy started it, and then conventional so-called medicine borrowed it and created the double-blind placebo-controlled study. The idea that when you start, some percentage of people, they will think themselves well. Literally, it's not made up. Their mind will actually work to heal their body. And so in studying, you try to account for that and figure out if what you're doing is just more placebo or if it's actually the modality you're using. But there's also something called the nocebo effect, where you can literally think yourself sick. And if we don't understand that our mind literally works to create the realities or alter or update our biology based on the thoughts that we have, then we also miss a big picture of health. And so I spend a good bit of time working really on the upstream stories that people have, what they have lived through, the narrative entanglements they've got themselves in, or the reasoning from a very shaky foundation about who they are, about their adequacy or their worthiness. And typically it's one of those two things. There can also be just this purpose vacuum in a person's life where they don't have to get, often gets into the spiritual realm where we need some intellectual underpinnings of where did we come from and what happens when we die and who sets the standards for morals and ethics and the big heavy hitter questions of life. If we have no answers to those, then it's really hard to sink your teeth into any sort of purpose. So it can go any number of ways, but if you feel like your efforts are just kind of meaningless or what's the point, who cares, why bother, then your biology is going to reflect that because there's no drive to want to get better at something. So it really is what I end up doing is I triage people and ask them just a range of questions to get at those areas of life to figure out where they're really stuck. And then sometimes it's it is a chicken or egg question. Do I help the biology get better so we have the reserves to face the heavy emotional stuff? Or do I help somebody with the heavy emotional stuff to free up the biological bandwidth for the body to heal? But yes, it is one puzzle, and trying to separate it often just leads to loops rather than genuine healing.
When you're trying to help somebody, what do you find are the biggest kind of blind spots people have when it comes to trying to get well?
So I'll answer that in a couple of different frames. One would be just like I said earlier, the storytelling loops, because all of us, we are meaning-making machines. We can't help but try to fill gaps in what we don't know or what doesn't quite make sense to us about who we are or how the world works. And inevitably, we tell ourselves stories that are either partially true or not true at all. And so easy examples, like if you're driving and somebody cuts you off in traffic, there's any number of stories you could make up about why that person did that. Often we tend to default to the not so nice list of options. And maybe the person was in a hurry rushing to see a loved one at the hospital because they're about to die. You just don't know. But we do this gap filling in the story of our own life, retroactively trying to make sense of something or make sense of why that we got that sideways look from somebody or what is going on in the news or any number of things. And it was Dale Carnegie who actually pointed this out to me in the book, How to Win Friends and Influence People. He said, everyone goes through their life thinking that they're right all of the time, which if we just did the math on that, it's not possible that all of us are right all the time. And if we can step back and say, maybe I'm missing something, maybe the story I'm telling myself about whether or not my parents actually loved me, maybe the story I'm telling myself about my spouse, or maybe the way I've framed things as it was my fault, it was not something that was done to me. There's so many elements where inadequacy and unworthiness or striving and longing to become, or about just this ache for belonging that we have, taint the way we tell the stories. And so if you have a big blind spot of an assumption that the way you're framing reality is definitely true, and you don't have a freedom to question, maybe I'm telling myself a crappy story. Maybe if I had to defend this perspective in court, I couldn't do it. And it's just kindly pointing that out to people where I identify obvious gaps in what their story is. And how did you come up with that rule or that story based on those experiences? It could have been something else. And when that's done kindly, my gosh, it's so much easier for somebody to there's a humility and a curiosity that starts to fill the vacuum. And it's easier to find a different way of seeing things. And often that is so mentally and biologically freeing that the person can really begin a healing journey. So that's on kind of the mental, emotional level. On the physical, one of the biggest blind spots is the lack of awareness of toxicity. And I could say that's toxicity. I kind of expand that beyond what people typically think. It's not just chemicals. It can be, obviously there's poisonous thinking, but there's also microbial toxicity. There's parasites is a big one. Like a lot of people don't know how problematic that can be. And in the Western world, for whatever reason, we dismiss it as it's not really relevant. And that only happens in the third world, as if worms behave differently in different countries. But that reality of an upstream toxicity, in the case of microbes, whether it's mold or candida, yeast, parasites, whatever, that's a self-replicating problem. And if we don't know how to balance that ecosystem, we can be chasing all the downstream symptoms of that poisoning. But same thing with mercury or plastics or PFAS or whatever different chemicals that are ubiquitous and hard to get away from. If we don't have a root cause identification that says it's impossible for me to live in a world free of toxins, and that burden then creates different downstream symptoms, you end up on a whole bunch of medications, you end up going to a whole bunch of specialists, and nobody's actually getting to the root cause. And we think testing is going to be the way that we figure out what's wrong with us, when testing is just typically showing you how your body's breaking down, not why it's breaking down. And once it clicks that those are two major blind spots. There's other ones I could give, but that, to frame it on the high level, are really if those two things start to click, wait, I may have some storytelling that's not great, and I may have an upstream toxicity problem that is literally poisoning my biology and can also short circuit your thinking and give you brain fog and all sorts of other things. Fixating or getting your head around those two things can go a very long way to helping heal, and sometimes heal in dramatic fashion in much shorter time frame than doctors typically think is possible.
It must be quite difficult, especially if you're suffering from kind of mental health challenges, or you've got long-term illness and you're not quite sure what's causing it. It's quite difficult to have the headspace or perhaps even the positivity to think about some of the things you're saying then. How does somebody who's, say, for example, drinking too much alcohol, how do they then kind of relate that back to what you're saying maybe the underlying causes might be, and how to move forward from that?
Yeah, great question. So, and I've dealt with this fairly frequently. And so the challenge of, I'm in a loop of, let's just use your alcohol, for example. Part of the way out of that, I almost think of it like a traffic circle. Like there's different ways to get out of this loop that you're in. And some of them will redirect you right back to the problem. Part of the solution to, or the way out of that with some level of permanence, is to recognize that something else is driving your behavior. You're not longing for alcohol. There can be a biological craving, but what you really want is a better life. What you really want is to fill a loneliness gap. What you really want is a sense of purpose. You want a sense of belonging. There's some other thing that is driving your behavior. And so if it can be appreciated that your habits are just a downstream reflection of something too, ultimately they're a reflection of your longing. And a longing can often be subconscious. We don't even know what's driving our behavior. We just know, I don't like this and I'd like to feel differently. But over the course of time, I've basically identified 12 different dependable, predictable, everyone has them, drivers of human behavior. There's a longing to become, or to belong, or to have fairness, or to have understanding or significance or dignity, so on. And once we kind of get some intellectual underpinnings or some ability to identify what's actually the thing we're craving, love, adventure, romance, whatever, those things can be instructive. And you can then look downstream at the alcohol and be like, there's no way that's going to actually meet any of those. I'm not becoming or belonging or having an element of fairness or understanding because I'm drinking. So you back it up, say, okay, the longing drives my thoughts. Sometimes that you can't see the bridge, but the more you think on it, you can. Longing drives the thoughts drive the behaviors, and the behaviors become habits. And so sometimes it's just that simple through line that can, if you have the headspace to reflect long enough. And there's sometimes that if the alcohol cravings are significant, then there's a biological puzzle too of figuring out how to get away from that. Some people are, tiramisu with a drop of alcohol in it will send them back to a drinking binge. So that's a different animal than, just the person who doesn't. It's just kind of they've fallen into a habit of it. But so if there's a willingness, or there's you're finally at a breaking point where you're ready to look at that stuff and have honest conversations with your health. And the other big piece is having a psychologically safe space to do it. Often that's a big vacuum in people's lives, as they don't know where to process this stuff. And so that's part of why we have calls and the ability for people to, okay, here I can let my hair down. I can finally be real and honest. And sure enough, you find out you're not the only one who feels and has had that experience. And there's something so relatable about seeing other people wrestle with similar things. And identification of, they articulated a longing you have that you couldn't tell was what was driving your behavior until you had that moment. So that's one of the ways we help people get out of it.
That itself is the essence of this podcast, is to listen to other people experiencing something that you can relate to, and therefore have inspiration that there is a way forward. Just coming back to, you were talking about toxification. It doesn't have to be physical, it could be mental. So how could detoxification be used to improve your health?
In any number of ways. So if we zoom out and understand that, really, in my opinion, the only thing that explains the appalling health statistics that we have is toxicity. It's in the U.S. now, 6 out of 10 people have at least one chronic health condition. Our obesity statistics, 42% of people are obese, which counts as a disease condition. 75% of us, basically 3 out of 4 people, are overweight. And the only thing that would reasonably explain that is not that human nature changed and we don't care about our health anymore. What changed is that we have been slowly poisoned over time with the 80,000 plus synthetic chemicals and a re-engineering of our farming practices and our biology and what we eat. And that burden through, ironically, food and medicine has literally been poisoning us. So to say, well, shoot, what if we got the poisons out of the body? What if we took away the source of burden? And really, symptoms are a downstream ramification of two things. There's only two things that make us sick. There's toxins and there's malnourishment. It's really that simple. So if we took away toxic burden and the system, the engine could function better. Think of like getting your car, you get a car wash and you can get maybe rotate your tires. But if you go detail the car and you change the oil and all, that's essentially what the engine just runs better. And the same thing with the human body. When we clean it out and remove the burden and nourish it over time, unburden the body, purify what's already in there, and then nourish it back to health, any disease condition, any brain fog, any old loop of stress or aches and pains has the opportunity to be dramatically influenced toward healing. And that's been the fun process for us, is just to simplify that down to, shoot, that's really, we don't have to treat anything now. There's no disease condition we set our sights on. We just say, this is how the body functions. Let's see if we can help it function better. And sure enough, and I can tell you some whopper stories of transformations that are, whoa, somebody recovered from that? Yeah, because the body was in charge. We were just placing our bets on the body's innate intelligence that knows how to heal itself.
Let's say you work a 50-hour week. You're struggling, you get home, you need to eat or feed your kids. And that the concept of eating food that perhaps doesn't contain some of the toxins that that you're talking about. How do you go about doing that in a kind of simple way? Because you walk into a supermarket, and how do you know which food you should be buying and which, you shouldn't?
Well, simple answer to that is pick up the food and look at the label. Do you recognize what's on it? And if not, you probably don't want to eat it. So if you know what ground beef is, you know what an apple is, you know what, that's all that is. That's food the way nature packaged it. And what we have created is a lot of food-like products. So there's so many simple ways you can trim off or prune these inputs of toxicity. But as a husband and father of 6 who all live at home right now, and who we homeschool our kids as well, I can appreciate layers of complexity in someone's life, and that you can't change everything at once, nor can you have it all. You can have it all at different times of life, but you can't have it all simultaneously. So, but your health is you only get one body. It's the number one asset you have. Your brain is not just, in this taxi that scoots you around. It's literally influenced by everything else. And so if your physical health is not well, at some point you will come to the end of your ability to do that. Which proactively, at least for me, for whatever reason, thank you, Lord, I had the foresight to say, I can't keep living this way. So simple things you could change would be just your input of your water. Do you have a great water filter? You can get fancier with structured water and so on. But do you have good water? Do you shop around, at least in the US, do you shop around the outside of the grocery store? That's typically where all the real food is. All the aisles down the middle are typically all the prepackaged, processed stuff that's been denatured and doesn't heal you. So there's a lot to learn, but you don't have to try to take it all on at once. It's pick a few key areas. Maybe just make sure you don't have anything with vegetable oils in it, or reduce your sugar. And with each little layer of the onion you peel, you start to feel a little better. And if you have your sight set on, this is a puzzle, I'm going to be moving into it over time, and don't let yourself get overwhelmed with it. I can't change it all at once. So let me see. Sometimes you want the sounding board to say, of all the things I could change, what is the most important thing to change? And that's really where we come in. But I appreciate that it can be complicated. And typically my questions are aimed at figuring out where the easiest wins are for someone.
And are there other ways that you can detox that perhaps don't seem as obvious?
Sure. Yeah. There are many things. And so one of the things that was helpful for us in our study was recognizing there's a difference between purification agents and nourishing agents. And so a lot of the stuff in the supplement world just gets so mixed, or in the health world. And in my opinion, there's a few key things, depending on which platform I'm saying this on, that they may not like that I'm mentioning this, but if you want me to, I can. But there are specific purification agents like chlorine dioxide, structured nanosilver, DMSO, OSR, things that do a tremendous job helping purify the water in the body, or help purify the blood in such a way that the toxins can they've been dissolved. It's on you to make sure your lifestyle helps them get to the exits. If you try to do a detox and your exits are not open, you're not pooping, you're not sweating, you're not peeing, you're dehydrated. You'll just have your retox scenario. So you got to get the exits open, but some purification agents are tremendous. There's nothing that they really don't purify. So sometimes a good parasite cleanse where you understand how to go after and literally choke out and poison these guys so that they're like, this neighborhood stinks, I'm moving out. If you don't know how to do that well, or that you can do that with mold or candida, whatever, then you can just have those recurring flare-ups. But it's not impossible to do this. Save OSR. The other three that I mentioned are so inexpensive. They could replace almost every medication in terms of you wouldn't need them. I'm confident now. I didn't used to have this confidence, but now I'm confident any infection you could throw at me, I wouldn't even need an antibiotic for it. I know how the body rebalances its ecology, and I know what chokes out pathogens. And it's really dramatic in its ability to do that. And pharma just doesn't want you to know about it. So that's a whole different rabbit hole of why that is that way. But then there's also the mental toxicity and having, like, to your point, you got to have somewhere to process that. Because if you are stuck in swirling anxiety or dramatic self-doubt or giant lack of purpose, that is the poison. And until that poison has been settled and dealt with and expunged from your existence, or it's just a fleeting thought that kind of washes over you, all of us have our, fleeting difficult times from time to time, then you're going to stay in that loop. So those are there's a lot more I could say, obviously, about all of that, but that'll give maybe the listeners some underpinnings to think about it.
Where do you get these purification agents from? Just from a pharmacy?
Well, typically not a pharmacy. A lot of them you can just get online. So chlorine dioxide and OSR in particular are sold as water purification agents. And it's a big no-no to say they have anything to do with health, depending on which country you're in. Some countries are much more free to speak about these things. Anywhere pharma has a stranglehold on the media, they typically are going to be, if you search them, you'll find the scariest things to try to, you're risking your life. Be afraid, be afraid, be afraid. And they'll try to scare you away from using them. But yes, you can find them online. Typically, you just look for them by name. Structured nanosilver is not hard to find. DMSO finally got out of jail in 1994 when they realized it's an herb. You can't regulate it like it's a drug. People, and they still use all these things because they're so good at purifying. They just don't want you to make the connection that, wait, this is good for purifying water before you drink it. And the human body is mostly made up out of what? Oh, that's right, water. And so if we purified the water and then purified the water, it might actually help us. That's just not something they want you to know about. But yeah, you can find that you could take care of your whole neighborhood for $100. It's so inexpensive to do this. You can make silica water for 5 cents a gallon, and it's great for chelating aluminum. But they don't want you to know that. So,
and why do they not want? Why don't they want you to know? What do you think the cause?
I mean, the short, easy answer is greed and profit. There's a cartel on health, and they like to, the statin industry, for example. Statins have literally sold $1 trillion worth of their product. Never mind, they actually cause the problem they're telling you they cure. They stop your body from making CoQ10, which is intimately involved in heart health. Go figure. But they have the monopoly. They've claimed for themselves the title conventional, and you can't use the words cure, treat, prevent, ameliorate, or mitigate because we owned those words. And so therefore we have to say things like water helps prevent, or not water, I can't say that. Water helps with symptoms of dehydration. It helps empower the body to deal with the problem of dehydration. I can't tell you water prevents or cures dehydration. So it's a funny world. And by the way, nothing I'm saying is personal health advice. This is just for informational purposes and education. But yeah, you can find these things, and the powers that be would like to keep their monopoly, and treating sickness is very profitable. A patient cured is a customer lost. And so the recurring revenue model of get people on prescriptions, get people on the path to procedures is just a business model. And it's a highly profitable one, but it's also why we're so sick. In the US, the healthcare system is the third leading cause of death. I think we have a problem here. So yeah, that's the short answer is greed and money making. And there's at some point it spills over into indifference to human suffering.
And how about the the food manufacturing sector? Because putting stuff into our guts buying it in supermarkets. And I guess ultimately we have a choice over what we buy.
Mm-hmm.
As you said, you can check the label, but I guess it's down to choice, having that choice available.
Yeah. Well, and here in the US, I don't know where it is where you are, but we subsidize the worst food. Like our government is paying people to grow more of what we don't need to grow because we can put it in these packaged foods and it makes a lot of money. And so you may have some sticker shock when you start switching to real food. And that's another like, oh my gosh, this food costs more? Yeah, it does. But it's your health assurance, your health insurance that you won't need. I'm not worried 1% about my future health situation. I know how to take care of this body. That's worth paying for. And I get to enjoy the health that's the envy of most people because I spend the money on the good food. I use purification agents. I understand my limitations and I get enough sleep and so on. And so there's a personal logistical puzzle as well as a financial one in there that sometimes can keep us from that. But once it clicks that nobody's coming to save me, it is on me to take care of my health. And if I don't take ownership of it, the system's got a whole set of medications and surgeries that they're waiting to give me when my body breaks down. I opt out. No, thank you. I do not want to play that game. And so I will choose to cut something else so that I can afford the food I need. And my gosh, it doesn't take years to get back in front of it. It takes weeks and months. So, if you got a long way to go, you got 100 pounds overweight. Okay, let's give it a year or two. But gosh, it is not that hard. And it's so rewarding to never worry about your health.
I guess, it's pretty basic, really.
Yes, which is refreshing, right?
Eat food. I think I'm going to really misquote this. Eat food, mostly green, not too much. Something like that.
Michael Pollan. Yeah, that's his book. I remember that one.
But essentially, also eat food that looks nearest to how it looked when it was sourced. Again, I've probably badly.
No, you did that one well. I would quibble with Michael Pollan on mostly plants, is eat food, mostly plants, not too much. But yeah, I think we often throw animal foods under the bus and then there's no nuance. And it would just say animal foods as if they're all the same, as if like a vegan soy cheese pizza made from glyphosate sprayed flour is plant food. Like, hang on. Don't eat that either, even though that's from the plant world. There's something wonderfully healthy about quality animal foods that bring a depth of nourishment per bite that you just can't match with plants. So I'm not throwing plants out. I'm just saying we sometimes have vilified animal foods too much, and they're a key for healing. We've helped so many people get well by getting them turned on to the real products.
So maybe we need to eat more like our grandparents or their parents.
Yes, go figure, right? Yeah, stop being afraid of animal fats for one. And to your beautiful point, returning to simplicity and in so returning, guess what? You're going to give up a little bit of convenience because you can't just reach for a bar and put whatever powdered, fake, nasty stuff into your body that's the most convenient so you can just tell hunger to turn off while you keep going. There's again, it's back to ownership. Am I going to take the time to not use a microwave, dirty a pot? Now you got an extra dish in your sink. Okay. Acclimate to that. You're going to have to cook real food. There's probably going to be more cooking and less dining out if you value your health and so on and so forth. So there are lifestyle changes that you can't make all at once or that take a while to move into. And they take a personal philosophy that makes it possible. But once you've done that, gosh, yeah, a lot of our clients have to work a lot harder at their health than I do because I'm not fighting to pay back health debt. I'm free of health debt, and I can enjoy a healthy life without taking a whole lot of effort to do it compared to what it takes to change that.
Are there mistakes that people make? I know you talked a little bit earlier about making sure your body is kind of open, but are there other mistakes people can make when they start to detox? Maybe around expectations of time, how long it's going to take?
Yeah. So great question. Around time, how long it's going to take. So person specific. And what we never know when the body's the only one that has the full awareness of where all the toxins are, which thing is the most dire in need of attention. But on a realistic time frame, you should start feeling some improvement in a couple of weeks. Sometimes it's like the first few days, but often it's a couple of weeks, and you can kind of use every 2 weeks as a benchmark to say, is what I'm doing working or should I adjust something? But 2 months is about where you can go. Somebody else might actually notice this, or my brain fog is so dramatic. One of our recent stories, this just got an email a couple of weeks ago, a client who lost 36 pounds in 3 months. She had head to toe eczema since she was a child. It's down to just her forearms now. And the body knew what to do to heal. We just had to stop the toxic influx, change what she was eating, purify what was in there, and we taught her how to fast. Sure enough, her surgery's canceled. If you've got a long way to go, and some people, they really want weight loss too. That's the only metric that matters. And if I lose weight, it's working. If I don't, it's not. And you sometimes have to break that spell. Like, let your body figure out when the weight comes off. Right now, I'm sure it has other battles it's fighting. So let it go after that. And let's see what other toxicity can we cut off. Is it your mental framing, or is it something else? And so anyway, that's a realistic time frame. Another mistake people make is they try to go too fast, and you can just make yourself sick. You learn about some purification agents, or you're going to like more is better and faster is better. And maybe, but what you will successfully find if you try to go too fast is where your real limit is. And when you feel like doo-doo because you went too fast, that doesn't mean the sky's falling. It means success. You found out that was too fast for you. Let's back off. So those are two other big, just expectation management on one end, and then trying to go too fast and making yourself feel a little sick while you do it are two ways that are two big mistakes people make when they try to heal.
Can you give an example, a story where you've been treating, from a mental health perspective? I know they are, entwined, physical and mental health, but perhaps coming at it from a mental health perspective, can you kind of share an example of where that's worked?
Yeah, so it can be any number of situations, but so I'll pick like people who've had significant abuse from a parent or a spouse or something, like whether it's narcissist or physical or sexual abuse or something. Those often are so tender and have created such identity issues in that person where they feel like they're not worthy, where they feel like there's something inherently wrong with them. And no matter what I do, is just can never do enough. And that thing enough never gets defined. And so sometimes it is looking at, wait, that was actually done to me by another broken human. That doesn't necessarily reflect my value as a human. And it's being able for worth to wedge itself in there. But when it comes to, let's say, somebody who's had a narcissistic, abusive parent and their whole life they've never felt worthy, it's to recognize that, hang on, I do have a right to exist. I do have legitimate needs. And it's, if I don't ever take care of them, if I always put them on the back burner and I always try to meet everyone else's needs and out of this deep ache to belong and finally be good enough, whatever enough is, then I'll never get back in front of that. And that it's often a frame I use to help people with this enough frame. I just made up this metaphor of there's a prosecuting attorney in our head and there's a defense attorney. And typically the prosecuting attorney rules the room. He just walks around like he owns the place. And the defense attorney is just kind of this typically, underdeveloped, timid pipsqueak who doesn't know how to say, okay, fair enough. No, I could have done better there. But what were you expecting? Like, did you want me to manufacture time? Like, I was tired. And to have the defense attorney get a workout, grow a spine, get in shape, and bring to the table a fair discussion of what is enough, Mr. Prosecutor? When will I finally be good enough? Do I have to learn every language, play every instrument, travel to every country, solve every human problem, and then I'll finally be good? Like, what is your standard, sir? And if that defense attorney can ask that and put the prosecutor on defense, then, and their peers that are reasoning inside the human mind and human heart, those two peers can go at it in a way that's so refining, because none of us are perfect. And so somebody who's defense attorney just says, I'm perfect, that's a whole different animal. Like, no, but few people have that problem to think they never make a mistake. That's your narcissist. But for the most part, it's helping the individual say, you know what, maybe I do have needs, and maybe it's okay that I set a boundary and I articulate it and I even enforce a consequence if the boundary is violated. And it's things of that nature that can be so healing to the soul and to the heart and can do a lot to repair a self-image. And if you can, you're never going to be without the need to connect with other people, and recognizing that somewhere in here, I have to aim myself in a direction that increases the probabilities that I will satiate the longing to matter and connect with other people and to be significant. If you check that box and you have done your part, it's much easier to live a peaceful life and cut off a lot of that upstream toxicity from the mind and emotions.
So how do you typically work with people then? And secondly, how would they get in contact with you?
Well, thanks for asking. So yeah, I have two businesses, a private coaching business, and then I got kind of pulled into collaboration, and that's kind of developed. It's taken on its own life, and so it's fun. So my coaching business is truewholehuman.com, and essentially what I do there is it's just a basic consultation with somebody to see if I'm a good fit, but I'm triaging their lifestyle, their mind and emotions, and their biology to try to get a sense of where they are. And often I just work with them one-on-one to, as long as they need. I've had people stick with me for 6 months, and some people stick with me for 5 years because there's so much to talk through. But so that's True Whole Human, truewholehuman.com. You can apply for a consultation there. Where I've really gotten into detoxification, and it's become so fun to have. I've a pretty great network now of other doctors and coaches who I can reach out to at any time or who are part of what we do. And so in that, the business is called Healing United. And so the website is healingunited.today. So we wanted some urgency in the URL. So it's healingunited.today. And it also starts with a consultation. We have 3 different detox programs we take people through, from 8 weeks to just as a physical detox. We have a 16-week mind and body cleanse where we start with going after the mind and learning self-awareness and people skills, and just digging through the story loops people have gotten in. So we do a lot of emotional healing first to set the body up for a physical detox. And then we have a 12-month program. So which one is relevant to the person? We just book a call and talk it out. But so people can find that at healingunited.today. And I guess if everything I've said, if there's anything you want to take away from that, on the healingunited.today website, there is a free 7-part mini series I did called Why You Don't Heal Like You Used to. And that would be a great place to just kind of get your ears wet, hear a little bit more about what we do, and get some really good insights into what a healing journey would look like, or why it's been so hard, how to see through all the shiny objects and gimmicks marketed today and ground yourself in a holistic path to healing. That's really what we do. So those are the 2 websites. The podcast I run, Deconstructing Conventional, is on both sites. So truewholehuman.com. You can find me at Christian at truewholehuman.com, and follow our work. And if you want to talk, there's buttons for that too.
Thank you. So if somebody, you, apart from perhaps going to look at the series that you recorded on your website, what could someone listening to this do today, even if it was a very small step? If they feel stuck or something's not right and they're interested in perhaps exploring this concept of healing themselves through, let's start with what they put in their own bodies. What's the kind of first kind of baby step that they could take just on that initial path?
I guess I'd really just say you got to educate yourself. And I'd say that knowing there are so many competing voices that are trying to tell you they have found the one thing. And if you just find and swallow this one thing that they've got, or do this one quiz, or take this one test, or go through this one oversimplified procedure, whatever it is, then you will get well. And so I appreciate how complicated and overstimulated the health world is. And so to simplify it down, find a voice or 2 that you resonate with and just go deep, run that solution to ground and see if that doesn't make some sense. And so that, again, I'd point you people back to our mini series. It took me 20 years to write that, essentially, to figure out the hard-won wisdom so you can see through the gimmicks, so you don't get stuck on the specialist escalation ladder and a whole bunch of tests you don't need. There is a way out of that. And so I would just point people back to that mini series and say, look, check that out. And if it resonates with you, great. If not, find a different guru. I'm not for everyone. And what we do, there's a level of readiness you have to do it. But from drink water to read labels to get outside and go for a walk to make peace with your past. There's any number of things. And so without knowing the person, it's hard to give one answer. But if I boil it down, I'd say educate yourself. And to do that, find voices you resonate with and go deep until you know exactly what they're going to say all the time and you could repeat it.
Thanks, Christian. Thank you for sharing your insights, your knowledge. It's been really interesting, really useful. Thank you very much.
Well, thank you, Philip. It's been good being here.
Thank you for listening to the Midlife Men podcast with me, Philip Briscoe. If you want to find out more about Christian's coaching business, visit his website, truewholehuman.com, or for information about his detox programs, visit healingunited.today, where you can also find Christian's free 7-part mini-series called Why You Don't Heal If you have a story to tell, you think your experience would help others, then please do get in contact either via the website mid-lifemen.com or email me at midlifemen01@gmail.com. If you enjoyed listening, please do rate and review the podcast. And finally, there is now a book called Men Speak Up, Journeys Through Mental Health, which is based on some of the stories from the podcast, and it's available on Amazon and through other online retailers.